All right. All
How are
right.
you, mate?
How you doing so far today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for asking. Really appreciate you joining us here on the Allen and Aaron Sports Talk Radio Show. For those who don't know, this is Jake Ellis. So we had your dad on here. We'll start there. How was it being the son of a legend?
Yeah, mate. Well, just got finished watching the interview last night, and no, it was an awesome chat. But yeah, mate, no, it was to be honest with you, mate. Growing up, there was I always warmed up to the boxing the most out of all the brothers, and I've got four other brothers, and yeah, I've always just had that natural interest in it. And so that naturally, got me and my dad really close. He'd always come to the fights. I'd be training with my uncle Keith. And yeah, we just, obviously there was a lot of pressure on it. I just wanted to, especially as a youngster, I just wanted to enjoy it and box and stuff like that. So there was a little bit of added pressure to it, but there's also some added perks as well, So
Yeah, I can imagine being perks, being that everybody would probably know you through your dad. Talk about that experience. Where is that more pressure on you?
yeah, mate. Yeah, especially as like an amateur boxer, because I started boxing when I was 11. My first fight was at like 38 kilos, which is probably like 80 pounds or probably less. So I started as a real youngster and boxed all the way through. Had a few pro fights as well, and like I said, the idea was like I just loved the sport, and everything about it. Like I'd never played any other sport. It was just that from 11 years old all the way up to sort of 21 when it was my last fight back in 2012. And yeah, there was a little bit of pressure. Like naturally, people think, oh, it's his son, so he's going to be as good as him, or whatever the sort of, all the shenanigans that sort of come with it. But all in all, mate, like I wouldn't obviously change it for the world. I was blessed to be born into the best sport in the world and have a bit of a leg up. And it also obviously helped me with my promotional career, where I started promoting boxing in 2011 when I was 18 years old, and that gave me a massive little boost up as well. All the local trainers and stuff all got around me and got a few sponsors straight off the bat, thanks to my dad. So, there's definitely some added perks there.
Yeah, definitely. And talk about the transition from you going from a boxer to a promoter. What was it that said to yourself, you know what, maybe doing the same thing my dad was doing isn't my path. I need to find another path. Talk about that transition from going from boxing to a promoter.
Yeah, well, as a youngster, like I said, from 11 to all the way up to I was in year 12. I was boxing, as often as I sort of could. My weight division, I was always very, very light and quite tall for my size. I was a 6'1" featherweight, so 57 kilo. So, it was, I to be honest with you, I didn't really have any plans to promote. But after year 12, the teachers try and get you thinking for a career and all the rest of it. And, when you tell your teacher, oh, my career is going to be a fighter, they try and, give you all different other pathways and try and give you some ideas to, I guess, steer you clear from that, or at least have a plan B. So at around year 12, when I, got the textbook of, what do you want to be when you're older or after school and all the rest of it. And it got me thinking, and I thought, well, I don't really want to work in any other industry but boxing. So I'll either want to be a fighter, a promoter, a manager. I want to do something, something like that. So as I was sort of fighting, I decided at the end of year 12, like just straight after year 12, VCE, we call it down here, to do my first boxing event. And that was at 18 years of age. And at the time, there was only 4 promoters in my state. So it was a crazy thing to pursue. And the next youngest to me was 27 years older than me. So like, they're all 50-year-olds and all the rest of it with huge like business credentials. And, some of them were worth up to like $500 million. Like it was like, and here's me 18 years old working at Kmart, hoping to sort of, put this fight card together that I had, no business experience, no savings. My dad, although was a world champion, went bankrupt when I was a youngster. So, we didn't have any sort of, family money or anything like that. But I guess, they say ignorance is bliss. So I just thought, go straight at it, have a stab at it. And yeah, the first one was all right. I barely broke even, for the sort of money we outlaid. I didn't really have any to sort of outlay, but, just sort of trying to levy money, oh, this ticket money's coming through, that will pay for that. And just, trying to, I guess, as my uncle would say, make a birthday cake out of dog shit. And that's exactly what we did. We ended up pulling it off. There was only got about 600 people there. And I think there was about 6 pro fights on the card. So, far cry from sort of where we're at right now. But that's basically where it started.
Wow, that's quite the journey and business venture right there. And with you being a promoter, I guess what are some of the things that you underestimated or maybe didn't think about starting off so young?
Oh, mate, I guess it'd be easier to tell you the things I did think about, because
Yeah.
there were just pretty much 80% of it was just learning on the job. And like I said, no business credentials, no money, no real connections in the sport outside the family ties. It was like pretty much, I'd say pretty much everything I underestimated, you know. The hardest thing was like, I made the mistake a lot of promoters sort of made down here, and that was thinking, you know, if I could just put the most expensive and best fights on, then it will sort of, you know, attract all these people and all the rest of it. Whereas, you know, there's a lot more that goes into it. You got to understand the marketing side of it, and you know, the social media, which is one of the main reasons as to why I think I've been so successful, as sort of I have been. Naturally, now we're in Victoria, my state of Victoria, we have signed up around 80 to 85% of the registered fighters are signed to us. So we've got a huge chunk of the market share. But basically, yeah, pretty much everything outside the social media. The social media I pretty much got on nice and early, and I started buying up all the Facebook pages in Australia. So all the big Facebook pages that had a lot of followings, you know, 100,000 followings, 150,000 followings. I started purchasing all them for very, very minuscule amounts of money, because I understood that the future was going to be promoting through social media, while all the other promoters were still putting up flyers on, you know, on shop windows or light poles or whatever it might be. I immediately gravitated towards the social media and understood that would be my little niche where, you know, although what I lack in money and what I might lack in experience, I now can bring this new sort of new age marketing and sort of have a leg up on my competitors, you know?
Yeah, that's definitely a unique marketing strategy, and it definitely paid itself off. I guess one of the misconceptions a lot of people have about promoters is that they are loaded and have all this money and they're very greedy. That's why a lot of fights are not made. Is, you know, speak on that perception
Well,
that people have.
I mean, it might be the case in some instances in places like America or maybe something like that. I'm not too sure. I can't really speak on that. But sort of down here in Australia, that's not the case. Like we were, you know, not long ago, we were in a promoters meeting where all the promoters from all combat sports had to come to a board meeting, and you know, a lot of the guys shared a very sort of similar profit margins of sort of like 5-10%, if that, and that's with an outlay of up to sort of like, you know, it could be $500,000, $250,000, and that's, you know, and you're trying to pull these off every 8 weeks. It's not like you're doing one big show a year or something like that. And we get no government assistance. You know, the first 7 years I promoted, I never had a single sponsor, nothing. A matter of fact, when I was trying to get sponsorships, they were like turning me away naturally because, you know, down here, I'm not sure it's the same in America, but down here, we get, you know, we don't get a good rap in the mainstream media. Like they call, you know, they sort of look at us like a blood sport, try and paint us as, you know, that the industry is riddled with, you know, gangsters and all the rest of it. And that's all you're ever hearing on TV. So the sponsorship and government support is just, we don't even think about even trying to get anything like that going, you know? So, but, you know, lately, since sort of Jeff Bourne beat Manny Pacquiao back in 2017, we had a really good year in Australian boxing. Danny Green fought Mundine, who were the biggest rivalries in Australia. They fought for the second time, and it just gave it a resurgence. And then from there, it just sort of ticked over all the way up until now. Obviously, Cambosa's beaten Lopez, and the whole industry is just, you know, blew up. And the big thing as well that I think's brought a lot of eyes to boxing is this YouTube boxing. And we're doing a lot of it ourselves down here. We're doing one in May, and we just done one last month, or not last month, late December, I think it was 15 or something like that, where we had 12 celebrity fighters from, you know, reality TV shows, AFL, the local footy, or not the local, the national footy down here, rugby. I don't know if you guys know much about rugby, but we have all that, you know, Love Island and Married at First Sight and all these reality TV shows where we brought these guys in with the business plan from the Jake Paul, sort of the way he sort of goes about things. And we sort of try to copy it a little bit. And now we're doing the biggest corporate shows in the whole country, not just the state. So I believe that's sort of really helped give it resurgence. Again, people sort of steering clear from the mainstream media and sort of doing their own research and all the rest of it. So, you know, and it's basically local boxing down here is just going from strength to strength.
Oh, that's amazing. It's such a great thing that's just going that big. And at this point, has sponsorships been easier to get, or is it now much easier because of the transition?
Absolutely. Like this last 2 years, I've gotten, financially more money from sponsorships than I have in the last I've been going now 11 years, since 2011. And the last 24 months has been more profitable, not by a small margin, but by like 5 to 7x my bit all combined. So that's just sort of telling you basically what I'll basically trying to bring across to you before, which was this YouTube boxing. People understand that, they might not understand boxing and how that works, but they understand 1 million followers, or they understand, that the fact that, boxing, people since the beginning of time, people just didn't have access to boxing. They always wanted to watch it. And if you go look at even yourself, again, in America, I don't know the variations, but I'm pretty sure it's very similar. And that is, have you ever paid $50 to watch a football game or a soccer game, but you paid $50 to watch a Mayweather fight, a Canelo fight, a McGregor fight? So, even as a youngster in the schoolyard, where you could watch the best game of footy, best game of basketball, but if there was a fight in the corner, which one are you running to and watching? So it just shows, whether it's financial or even go back as you being a kid, that people have always wanted to watch the sport of combat, I guess, boxing, UFC, whatever it might be. They're more than happy to pay the most for it. And if they had an option of all the sports, they'd still go to the fight, and I'm a big believer of that. I just think down in Australia, we had such a limited access to it. We never had any consistency. It was always a random fight night and they wanted like $70 for it, no marketing behind it. A promotional company that just started because there was no real promotional company that had any sort of momentum. So, and you didn't know what you're getting. Sometimes you get an awesome undercard. Sometimes you get a grouse production, and other times you get the opposite. So it was just a very grindy sort of hustle, the sport, up until like I said, 5 to 7 years ago, when it started getting a little bit more of a corporate feel, and it just started attracting a little bit more of the fans we sort of want.
Yeah, absolutely. And now boxing is very similar in where you're at that is here in America. If you want to see some of the bigger fights, you have to pay to watch a lot of the fights nowadays.
Yeah. But now there's some things coming out like the Zone, and down here we got Stan Sports, and they've just sort of got into boxing, and a couple of these big streaming outlets I think will be will be the future, just to sort of be able to sort of get all the pay-per-views and put them all in one and just charge people a very affordable monthly subscription. I think that's the future, as opposed to back here we had Foxtel, and we'd have to get like Main Event and pay through there, and every fight was basically you had to pay for. Outside of sort of real local fights. But, even then it's like, when do we ever get to see them? We don't know which month it's coming up. There's no sort of program or breakdown for the year where we can just refer to, not like the football where you've got it every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and people can, get a bit, incorporate it into their lifestyles, I suppose, and their habits, and sort of have that consistency. Whereas, boxing has always just been like a one-off thing where every event almost feels like its own little business, where everyone's trying to suck up as much money as you can and then just poof, and then you sort of got to start again on the next one. Whereas the UFC, I think, have done the opposite of that and done that real well, where they've sort of built momentum, made a lot of their fighters stars, like even local guys down here that weren't even getting $3,000 a fight are now getting hundreds of thousands in the UFC because of their great strategy and their way to sort of roll one event into the next one,
No, absolutely. Is there a promoter that you kind of aspire to or look up to that say, what, that person's doing a great job, I'd like to be more like them?
Yeah, well, locally, it'd be a guy named Bill Morty, who, he promoted the best guys down here, which he even had my dad for a little while, but he had Jeff Finnick, he had Costa Zoo, he had all the guns. And since I was a youngster, my dad always told me that, because he had passed away by the time I was born or in and around that time. But my dad and all the people I looked up to, my uncle, who was one of the best trainers in Australia, always said Bill Morty's the one you want to aspire to. And he just basically broke it down to a couple of main rules, which was obviously keep your word, always put the fighters first, always come as close to sort of 50-50 matchups as you can. And just those sort of, fundamental rules that my dad sort of put in me as a youngster that he credited to Bill Morty. But on an international front, it'd definitely be like the Hearn family, like Barry Hearn, Eddie Hearn, I love him. I watch every minute of every interview of Eddie Hearn since far out. It's probably going back 5-6 years ago, where like literally every single minute of every interview, because I just love him so much, and I am aspiring one day. I know I'll get a fight with him, or one of my boys will fight on one of his cards, or we'll do something, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Eddie Hearn is definitely a guy who likes to spread his wings. I definitely think I can see an opportunity for you. And we had a guest on here, CamaKo Camilleri. He's now promoting fights. What do you think about the job he's done, maybe in his first venue?
Yeah, great, mate. Great. I'm a big fan of Joel's. I've known Joel since I was 11 years old, 12 years old, when my brother went and sparred him. We were all youngsters, and had a bit of a street beef there. So we went, all right, we'll settle in the gym. So my brother went down, had a little whack on with him. But Joel's an absolute legend, mate. He's fought for me a few times as well. He fought the late Dwight Ritchie, who was one of my best friends, who passed away in a sparring match, a couple of years later. And but yeah, and I've had Joel on, like I said, a good handful of times, and we've always had a very close friendship. And he put up a show the other day. I didn't get to see it because there was no live stream, but I saw bits and pieces, and I seen like odd fights here and there, and the fights looked like they were very entertaining. And the show looked like it had quite a few people there. So kudos to him.
Yeah, that's great. And now you have a big mega prospect, a heavyweight, Toese. Talk about him.
Yeah, well, he's just basically he's a former rugby player from the Melbourne Storm. He was in the youth, and he was sort of always aspiring to be a rugby player. And then sort of in his I guess it was late teens, early 20s, decided that he was going to pick up boxing. And he's from a family of fighters, and basically in 20 amateur fights and in a couple of years boxing, he made the Commonwealth Games, which for our side of the world is the second biggest games to the Olympics, and done really, really well. He's unfortunately got a real tough draw, the first one, which was against Fraser Clark from 10GB, and he's obviously Anthony Joshua's sparring partner, and there's massive raps on him now, and he went on to win gold. And we thought Toese won that fight. Like a lot of guys down here, we sort of had him winning, but naturally it was in Great Britain anyway, or the UK, whatever you want to call it. And the homeboys are always going to get, the close round. So you got to expect that, which we're used to. And I'm sure they think the same about us. Like it's not no big secret. But straight after that, he had about a year off, and then he basically showed some interest in turning pro. So me and his trainer, Sam Brizzy from the Brizzy Brothers Boxing Club, got together, had a chat, and one thing led to another. It wasn't a very hard transition. He basically turned pro under us back in 2019, and then he had a bit of injuries and corona, and down here in my state, we were the most locked down state in the whole world. So we had like 250 days of lockdown or something crazy. So big mass gatherings like events were just impossible, and the funding just wasn't there to do like no crowd events, because we don't have any networks, any network money or anything like that. So there was just no events for nearly the better part of 2 years. I think we've done one event in 2 years. So that sort of just tells you the difficulty on us trying to get these events out. But now we're now 2-0 with Toese, 2 knockouts. He's looking at having his third fight in a fortnight from now, on March 19th, and he's boxing a tough Irishman from the world champion stable of Sam Solomon.
Okay, great. So you have a fight coming up March 19th. What else can the fans expect to see from you in the near future?
Yeah, well, basically that show, we've got 12 pro fights on it. And out of the 24 fighters, we've got 22 locals from Victoria. We're flying in a bloke from Fiji for Jack Bowen, another superstar amateur who's now pushing on, into his pro career as well. We're having a real clean run. I think he's now 4 or 5-0. There's obviously Sam Solomon, the former IBF world champion. He's fighting Jesse White in a rematch of the first fight that was actually an absolute cracker. We've got another undefeated kid in Joel Taylor, who's 6-0, Mitch Leake, 4-0, like a couple of real good prospects coming through, with the plan being a lot of these prospects to be ready to take those real step-up fights, title fights, sort of within the next 12 to sort of 18 months. And hopefully by then, we're hearing a lot of word, like through Pro Bellum, who I'm recently signed up with, that, there may be some real potential for some big network deals. I've already sort of had a few come, and you heard a few out. And hopefully by then, a lot of these prospects are sort of hitting that 10-0 stage where they're ready to jump up, fight for a regional title, and potentially get rated in the top 15.
Awesome. So you got a great venue for them. And And I wanted to get your thoughts on how do you enjoy managing Keith Ellis's gym?
Yeah, mate. Well, I love it. Like I sort of took it on my back as sort of a bit of a responsibility, and obviously it's an honor. And we've had the gym running now for about 5 years, since 2017. So that's when we sort of created our own stable where we actually train fighters as well. But my thing that I've been doing since day one was always promoting and managing fighters, and that was my first thing. And I was doing that 7-8 years before I opened the gym, and that's always been my number one passion. And even with our boys, since we sort of opened the gym, there hasn't been a single fight night where my gym hasn't gone 50-50. It's not like my gym just gets all a bunch of wins and I get a bunch of B-siders and it's mismatches and all the rest of it. I make sure that, whether it's my boys training at my gym or it's anyone that's signed with me, I always try and come as close to sort of those 50-50 matchups. And, just not just for the benefit of the show, but also for the athletes' development. Because I'm a big believer of, if you're just fighting these guys that are way underneath you, there's nothing really there to learn from,
No, absolutely right. You want to be close and competitor in competition. And that's a great, great way to fight. And one thing that's really amazes me is that your passion, that you want to keep going at this even now, since at a young age. Now that you look back at it, what are your thoughts on how you reflect on, at 18, I was doing this, now I'm doing this?
Yeah, mate. Well, like I said from the start, mate, a bit of ignorance was bliss. I had no idea what I was really in for. And, from my fight career, by the time I sort of had to pick one or the other, it was, I was sort of trying to fight and promote. And I thought, I'll fight and get, attract some sponsors and help, ticket sales, and then sort of promote it. And I tried everything. And for the first 5-6 years, it was just heartache, because you put in 4 or 5 months of your time. Because at the time I wasn't really doing as many shows as I was doing now. I was lucky to do 2, maybe 3 shows. And, you put 3-4 months in, I'd be utilizing all my friends and my family to try and, get some free labor or, help me out with, whatever it might be. And at the end of it, you'd lose money, and by the end of my first year promoting, I was down $30,000, $40,000. And, I had to get a job at Kmart to sort of try and grind that down to just give myself an opportunity to go again, And so the first couple of years were extremely difficult. But since sort of 2016, it really just turned around for us. And we haven't had a single fight night where it hasn't been completely pre-sold out before the night since that time. So for the better part of sort of 7-8 years now, the tickets are pre-selling before the event even starts. And like I was saying about the sponsorships, they've gone up to a whole nother level too. So, the first half of my promotional career was a complete nightmare, to be honest with you. Something that, looking back, I just think, I don't know if I could go through that again, how did I ever do that, or whatever it might be. These are sort of some of the things I'm asking myself, because it was really tough, mate, and, but just like anything, mate, anything really difficult usually brings a highly credentialed result. So, I stuck with it, grinded away, and now we're in a really good spot.
Yeah, the determination is really there. Guess you learned that from your dad. That's awesome. And one of the things that I want to make sure that the fans have an opportunity to is support you. How can fans at this point or venues support you in your campaign or follow you?
Well, we're on all social media. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the rest of it, all on Team Ellis Boxing. And also all our shows are broadcasted live on Fight TV, which is the same network, I believe, all the Jake Paul fights get streamed from outside of America. The rest of the world go through Fight TV. And we use the same guys. So, keep an eye out for any events we may have coming up. And jump on the stream, give it a watch, and maybe drop a comment, give us a like, something like that, mate. The support goes a long way.
Absolutely. I'll make sure the fans do that. And one big fan that you have, who set up this interview was my good friend, Glenn Earnshaw. He's a big fan of yours. He would like 2 promotional flyers of events that you got coming up.
Done, mate. Done. I'll send them straight over.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you joining us, Jake Ellis. Continued success. We're really impressed by what you're doing and what you're going to continue to do. Stay safe out there, and be safe and be well.
You too, mate.
Thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate you.
See you, mate. Bye.
Thank you. Over now.